Hey everybody, watch list time. 5 films that I've been watching recently that I think are quite interesting in one way or another. And 5 different labels, 5 different movies, 5 recommendations for you to get your teeth into. And we'll start with, inspired by a more recent episode of Something Blue where I talked about Moonlighting by Jerzy Skolimowski. Some people came along and said, Chris though, but you've seen his most recent film, haven't you, EO? And I went, well, I mean, I own it. Seen it? No, I haven't seen it. No. But seen it now, I now have. EO is the Jerzy Skolimowski tribute to O Hazard Balthazar, another film I haven't seen. But what is EO? EO is probably the oddest film on my list here, and this is a lot of odd films in this list. EO follows the story of a donkey called EO that at the start of the film is in a circus, and he gets removed from the circus by animal protesters who basically say, he's no life. They kind of want him relocated, and he gets moved around to a donkey compound with other donkeys, etc. And we basically followed the journey of this donkey as his weird and wonderful life takes twists and turns where he finds himself, kind of what he ends up doing. And it's all a bit confusing, is probably the best word. In fact, it was so confusing that I got to the end of it and went, I don't think I like that. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it because I know some of the themes that it's talking about, but also why do it like that, etc. So I did something that I'd almost never do in that case. And it only happens because this is kind of a bit shorter. I just stuck it on again and I watched it through again. Once you know what happens and kind of the themes, etc. is going on, you start to look for everything else that's in the movie. You start to look for the themes that they're talking about, the themes of relocation, about happiness. I think there's a lot about this and happiness. We basically get lots of close-ups of the donkey. And I think we as humans look at animals and try and read their emotional state based on this. Now, this was a donkey acting, so not actually the donkey, but I think Skolimowski does a really good job of trying to convey some emotion through the character of the donkey and the things that are happening to him and the people that he encounters and the people that he doesn't see anymore. It's sort of about everything as well, and I mean everything in the sense of everything that's going on in the moment. The world sucks right now, and this film sort of is a microcosm of that all in one, because it just follows the course of the donkey. There's very little dialogue goes along with lots of close-ups, a lot of cinematography that we get to use. We get to examine the world and the location around us, and it gives us room to breathe and think and consider what actually all this is about. And you might come to your own conclusions video, because I think it is also one of those movies that is left there with a lot of ideas and a lot of discussion left to be had about it. It's another fabulous film. But part back after first watch, I was sort of very indifferent to it. So in the extras in this disc, some real great stuff. There's a really wonderful conversation between Skolimowski and co-writer Eva Piaskovsky, at the New York Film Festival about the making of it, where the interviewer asks a question at the start. Skolimowski starts to answer. 25 minutes later, he finishes answering the question, and the interviewer looks down at the sheet and goes, I think you've answered everything that I've asked you in a kind of one go, which is really wonderful. There's also a walk through Skolimowski's career with Michael Brook that's nearly an hour long. It's brilliant. There's a short film here, and there's also a Children's Film Foundation film, which is always a real treat about a donkey. This is a great release. This is also out in Janus Contemporaries as well. I think this is probably the slightly better release, if you ask me, but your mileage may vary. I think either way, it's a fascinating film. Next up is, another fascinating film, a film that was announced by this label and everybody kind of went, oh my god, I can't believe that's getting a Blu-ray release. So I kind of went into it with certain expectations that it was going to be really good, and then started watching it and went, how am I going to talk about this in the watch list? How am I going to discuss it? It's Music of Chance. So it's a film starring James Spader and Mandy Patinkin. And the film starts with basically Mandy Patinkin driving along and picks up James Spader at the side of the road. He seems to have been rather distressed, but is quite well dressed. Turns out he's a card player. And He's a card player, really fancies himself. He thinks he's really great. And Mandy Patinkin kind of propositions him, says, look, if I stake you in a big game that's coming up, will we split the winnings some way or otherwise? And he says, like, okay, what are you looking to gain out of it? And Mandy Patinkin sort of brushes him off and says, he needs some short-term money or otherwise, but we're not really sure. They go to a private poker game with these two older men. Let's call them the two guys out of the Muppets, because they're sort of like, it's Joel Grey and Charles Durning, who are both excellent in this, and they play this high-stakes poker game. That's where the straight line of the plot kind of leaves you, because the film then goes on to be about lots of other stuff. For instance, these two men have obviously far too much money and time. They don't know what to do with it, and they have like mini side projects that they like to do. They have a lot of land around them that they're going to use in certain ways, and they also have little miniatures of the place that they live, etc., built within the house, that are hobbies that they put themselves into in different ways. And it's about a lot of weird stuff, and about a lot of very prescient thematic stuff. So much so that you'll be watching it going, did you really dress up this issue? And I don't want to say what the issues are, because it kind of, I don't want to put ideas in your head, because it's a thing about discovery, this film. Did you create this whole construct to talk about that thing in that way? Scratching my head the whole time along. And it's not until the very, very last scene, which is an absolutely beautiful one, by the way, that you kind of go, huh. Well, that sort of makes sense. I get why you would do that. I get what's happening there, and it kind of gives it a finality. Music of Chance is a really interesting, wonderful, all-ball of a movie, and one that I think everybody should sort of see who likes interest in cinema. So if you kind of like finding something that's a bit strange or weird, this definitely falls into that category. There's a video essay by Adrian Martin and film critic Christina Alvarez Lopez, and this is no commentary by it as well. And then interviews with Joel Grey, Emmett Walsh, who's always brilliant in as well, and composer Philip Johnson, because interesting soundtrack the whole way through this as well. Music of Chance kind of thought the film was going to be about music. Not really sure what the title is about. I'll leave that thought with you. Next up, Canadian International Pictures in a release that everybody had sort of talked about for the past while, and that is Gina. Came out this year. Very lauded release. Canadian International Pictures being a partner label of Vinegar Syndrome, and quite a lauded one at that. Gina tells the story of a girl who's a dancer, an erotic dancer if you want, who takes on a job after her friend gets beaten up, so to speak, up and out of the way for a lot of people that are working on the land, so to speak. Seems to be, I can't remember what it is, an oil rig or something they're doing anyway, up in the wilderness, and freezing cold, and she goes up to dance there, and she kind of meets a group of people, the workers that are working there, the people that are living in this small town, and then there's a film crew that are documenting everything that's happening up there. So there's these friendships formed, but she's sort of by herself. It sort of looks at relationships with other people in that context, kind of who they are and what they are, and then about 2/3 of the way through transforms into another movie entirely. And well, if you want to know what it is, you can look it up very quickly. It'll be probably in the headlines of something else. But if you want to go in blind, because it kind of turns into something, like I say, completely else entirely. It's a complete tonal shift in it, and it's all the better for doing it, because it makes the film really about something then, and gives everything else that happened before it kind of extra meaning, extra detail, and makes it a film worth discussing then, because I think it's one of the best examples of this type of movie, especially for how they set it up, especially for the world that they create with it, and especially because of everything else that's going on. Gina, I think, is an absolute terrific movie. Extras in this, there's included a video essay by Alexander Heller Nicholas. That might give some clues as to what actually happens in terms of tonal shift, if you know her work. There's an interview with the director. There's an audio interview with the cast members in it as well. I think it's an absolute terrific disc, fully featured. No slipcover, but more on the shelf. Fit on quite nicely. Next up is their box set, and these have been announced, but I realised that I hadn't watched any of the first one, which was The Western Approaches, is the first box set in the Arrow Spaghetti Western series that they're kind of putting out. Like I say, the second one, Blood Molly's come out, sitting on the shelf. Savages has been announced. for the third one coming in. And this one is Massacre Time, the first chronological one that's in it. Spaghetti Western by Lucio Fulci. It's absolutely brilliant. It's got Frank O'Neill in the lead role, who basically comes back to a place that has been seized by hooks and crooks and trying to wrestle control back from them for his homeland and his home space, and his brother and his mother and all those people that are living there. He's been living away, he comes back, and he, it's a very well tread trope in terms of westerns, spaghetti westerns or otherwise. And even Frank O'Neill's character is very the kind of dark brooding type. And in a lot of ways, it should be kind of westerns by numbers, but it's sort of an awful lot better than that. Must be the Fulci effect, because he kind of has some great ideas and great themes and character interplay that happen here. You have aloof characters in terms of the baddies. You have a father-son relationship in the baddies that kind of is very examined as way more complex than you normally see in a film like this, that I think plays off beautifully. And the whole thing is an absolute treat. And spaghetti westerns, I think, often have the reputation of being slightly more darker, sinister versions of what would be a classic American western, and this is again a very good example of this. I flipped the cover on it, as you've probably seen. It's a really well featured disc as usual, and you've got a documentary with a video interview with Frank O'Neill in it. He seems to happen a lot, and George Hilton as well is in it, and a video interview with historians. Look, placing it in context. Great start to this box set, one that I've really enjoyed, and yes, a kind of low-key big spaghetti western recommendation as well. And the last one we're going to talk about is another Kino Lorber title, and this is an absolute perler of a film. This is a Todd Haynes movie. It is Far From Heaven, and anybody that knows me on the channel will know I'm a big lover of melodrama, and I didn't know this was melodrama coming in, but this is a very classic riffing on Douglas Sirk style melodrama. But it's also one of those films when you're watching it going, when's this from? 2003? Right. You're watching it going, Julianne Moore's in this. And you're about halfway through the movie and you go, oh my, she must have been nominated for the Oscar, never mind winning it. Like, she must have been. It was such a stone cold, brilliant female performance. And sure enough, when I went to look it up, nominated that year for the Oscar, which was peculiar because I didn't know about Far From Heaven. Going through it, kind of going, oh, the cinematography in this is incredible. It's a wonder it wasn't more famed and nominated or win the Oscar. And sure enough, it was nominated. And Todd Haynes is a quite a prominent director, I'd say, in terms of being respected for his style of filmmaking. But essentially, Far From Heaven tells a story of a husband and wife relationship in kind of well-to-do America, played by Julianne Moore and Dennis Quaid, who she is the wife of the successful husband, so to speak, but they are socialites. They throw parties for people around, their people come over. And at the start of the movie, Dennis Haysbert character comes into it, who's the gardener, except he's the son of the former gardener who has passed away, and he comes in and he starts to work. And without kind of going too far on the plot, with the promise of Julianne Moore being at home and Dennis Haysbert being around there, they form a sort of friendship. But it's a friendship that people don't understand, because it is about race relations. It is about, things other than this socialite, this kind of well-to-do white suburban period America, because it's set kind of seems to be 50s, 60s kind of plays, and around the kind of the civil rights movement that was just burgeoning there underneath. It is an utterly brilliant melodrama. It's right up there. It's very reminiscent of something like Magnificent Obsession, the Douglas Sirk film, and one that I just was captivated by from start to finish. There is an audio commentary with Todd Haynes here. There's a making of documentary. They do an anatomy of a scene where they break down kind of some of the scenes that are in here, because some of them are very powerful and very moving. And a lot of the interplay and the things that people see are examined, the things that people don't see, and the things that people get upset about, and the relationships that go there. I mean, Far From Heaven is one of my favourite first-time watches that I've seen this year, and one that I heartily recommend. That is my watch list for today. 5 films, 5 different labels, 5 varied kind of looks at cinema, and ones that I reckon you should check out. Have you seen any of these? If you've seen anything like them, if you've seen them and recommend me other ones like them, because modern melodramas are obviously a lot less prominent than older ones, etc. Let me know how you're getting on, what you've been watching, and I'll catch you next time on the channel. Take care, all the best, bye.